The People Playbook is for professional business owners and leaders who understand business rises and falls on people. You will hear practical, real-world conversations on clear leadership, smart hiring, and building strong teams. All formulas for retention. Get ready to hear your professional peers and industry experts as they discuss lessons learned and best practices. Get that journal out. You'll be taking lots of notes.
Welcome to the People Playbook, where we identify common talent challenges, offer solutions, and best practices. This is Coach Cora, and thank you for joining us today here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, as we discuss the most important part of your business, people. The product you create or the service you deliver at the quality standards you set in place relies on people. We are here to help with the often challenging aspect of attaining, retaining, and developing, leading the talent you need to run your business. I have spent over 30 years as a learning professional, specifically as an organizational development practitioner, working with organizations to construct talent strategies to drive their business strategies and key outcomes. My work, my passion, is all about the people side of business. Quite frankly, I find the human being to be the most fascinating species on Earth. Today, we will focus on the meaning behind culture eats process for breakfast. We fondly attribute that to Peter Drucker. Now, I became a learning professional through my experiences. My father was a behavioralist. And early in his career, he ran the local or the statewide juvenile justice program in my home state. Being around young people, learning, growing, developing, and attaining the knowledge, skills, and abilities they needed that they didn't get in their upbringing was transformational for me. I would watch young people who, by their upbringing, were predetermined to be nothing more than a cog in society's wheel. And through developing, learning, and growing, they were able to change the entire course of their life. And I came to adulthood with that perspective. And here we are. We're going to talk about culture. And I am, from that experience with my father and watching all of those young people, I was an org dev professional in the making from a very young age. I remember in the late 70s, very early 80s, my dad was running statewide programs and was invited to participate in national debates around youth policy. And one of the things my father was known for, and I remember his voice, is he really wanted to challenge status quo. Because as it was traditionally at that time, most juvenile programs were focused on compliance and policy. And I still remember that voice that he had, just resounding. And he would get so passionate and he'd pound his fist on the table. And he would talk about, if the young people that come into our programs leave worse than when they entered, we failed. We failed on our purpose, we failed the state, and we certainly failed those young people. At a bare minimum, we should hold ourselves accountable that if they come into our programs for whatever reason, they should leave the same they came in. But it's our purpose. It's what the great people of this state have paid us and tasked us with do, is to help them leave our system better. And if we're not doing that, we're failing. And we don't get there through punitive actions related to compliance and policies. And if they do something that's not on the books, coming up with a new policy to punish them more. That just creates demotivation, frustration, and quite frankly, what we're building is adult criminals. And it's a failure. And I remember so much of him talking about, we need to identify what skills they need. How do we get them better? How do we give them tools? What tools do they need? And here I am today as an organizational development professional. And I see that in organizations today. It is so much easier to focus on compliance, to focus on policy, to focus on what did they do right, what did they do wrong, to use authority instead of influence, to use policy, not development. The challenge in that is in today's market, our labor market, we have a much less tolerance for being diminished or dismissed or punished. The workforce has a much higher expectation for organizations to be better and to treat them better and to have better relationships. And I know when I was growing up and watching my father in his career and being a part and hearing him speak and having these other leaders throughout the nation coming to our house and being on the deck and talking about these policies with passion, the biggest challenge they had is that the people within their systems didn't know any other way but compliance, punishment, and policy. And that was their barrier. So we're going to talk about that. How in the world do we shift away from a structure of compliance and policy to a structure of influence and development? This is Coach Cora, and I am on 9:30 a.m. The Answer here on the People Playbook. We'll take a short break for a CCL Ventures promo. As a listener of the People Playbook on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, you have access to a great deal. It is the new year, and with that comes new goals. For all of you leaders out there with development goals in hand, a 360 instrument can provide you the specific data you need to know what skills will improve your effectiveness when developed, and that is called targeted development. With a one-on-one meeting with Coach Cora, you will have a personal development plan in place that aligns with your personal style, strengths, and preferences. Text the code 360 in 2026 to 210-488-3738 and receive the 360 Instrument Administration and a one-on-one coaching session with Coach Cora, not for $500, but today for $450. That is a $50 savings. Again, text 360 in 2026 to 210-488-3738. This is Coach Cora, and we are back on the People Playbook. And on 9:30 a.m., we have been notified that there's been a question posted on social media that we are going to answer. What is the question that we have from our social media follower?
Thanks, Coach Cora. So the question we have today is, are you suggesting we should not hold people accountable for what they don't do or do wrong?
I love that question. And that is so often the challenge. But people are going to fall short of expectations, and people do things wrong. Do we not hold them accountable for that? And I am so glad that they asked that, because the answer to that would be, before we start holding performers accountable, we must hold leaders accountable. And before we move to compliance, there are a lot of responsibilities that the leader has to ensure that that employee is even able to perform and perform well. So leaders are accountable first. And the challenge in only practicing compliance, punitive responses, and policy is I don't, as a leader, understand the power of influence. And I don't understand the importance of development. So in order for leaders to shift away from being compliance and policy driven with responses that are more punitive. They need to shift to a diagnostic and development focused. And there's a quick, easy checklist I use for leaders to do that. Leaders are accountable for providing clarity. Do the people reporting to you understand expectations? Not do you understand, do they understand the expectations? It is important for the leader to clarify that and to confirm that. Have you confirmed their competence, their ability to execute on the expectations? Do they know how? It's so easy for leaders to assume. Of course they know how. Everybody knows how to do this. Unless you have seen them do it right and within the standards, you don't know that they know how to do it. It is a leader's responsibility to ensure that when they've set out expectations, people have the knowledge, skills, and ability to execute. And do they have the resources? Do I have everything I need? Knowledge is a resource. Time is a resource. Support is a resource. Do I have what I need to execute? If I am directed to go out in that warehouse and move all of those boxes with that forklift, are they certified on the forklift? Do they know how to drive a forklift? Do they know how many boxes they can stack? Do they know where the boxes go? Do they know the order of inventory? These are the things that we need to make sure that they have before we move to a compliance response. The other big question that gets left out oftentimes is, what are the barriers? What's in the way? I can't tell you how many times I have heard stories about people that have said they end up in HR, there's a reprimand, the leader's tired of dealing with them. And when you ask them questions, on this particular day, you were directed by your supervisor to do X. What got in the way? And the answers are so crazy, but one would be, well, my boss's boss came and told me to go do that over there, so I did. Oh. But we don't ask those questions. When we jump to compliance and policy, the policy is if I ask you to do something, my expectation is you'll do it. And oftentimes if I say, hey, I need you to do this as soon as possible, but the other person says, I need you to do it now, and then a third person comes along and says, you needed to do this yesterday, drop everything you're doing. If we allow our employees to get caught up in these situations where they're not clear what the priorities are, they have multiple direction, they're just trying to keep up. When we ask the question, what was the barrier? What got in your way today? 10 people ask me to do 10 different things. That creates the opportunity for the leader to be helpful. And if I can come in and say, let me remove some of those barriers for you. Let me pave the way. Let me be clear what a priority is. If I ask you to do something and it's a top priority and somebody comes and asks you to do something else, direct them to me. Whatever that is, helping them through that barrier allows them and frees them to continue to work and do what they're supposed to be doing. The other thing that really can create challenges in performance that happens way before we get to the compliance piece is a communication loop. If I've communicated my expectations and then you've gone out and executed, have I checked in with you? Hey, are you having any problems? How's it going? Where are we at with that? What do you need from me? When I learn to lead through influence means I'm using questions. What questions can I ask? I can uncover so many challenges and so many things that I may not even know are happening or are a challenge. That's the beauty. That's the beauty. So to answer that question, should we not hold people accountable? Absolutely. But first, we have to hold people accountable to our role. We have to hold ourselves accountable to our part in that. Have I provided the expectations? Have I given you everything you need? Have I made sure that there's no barriers in the way? And am I communicating? And in communicating, not just, here's what you did wrong. Am I clear with my communication? It looks like you've accomplished this, and this. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. You've accomplished that. You've done it well. Good for you. The next thing we need to work on improving is, and here's how you can be better. Leaders that use influence help people be better. Leaders that use compliance shut down performance through focusing on what they didn't do. And why this is so important, why this is so incredibly important in leadership, is that if I go and tell employees things they already know, you didn't do this, you were supposed to do this, you did this wrong, most employees know if they did something wrong. Most employees know that they're not meeting expectations. Most employees know that it's not going well. So when I come and tell them that, I have not been helpful. In fact, a good percentage of employees are already doing a great job of beating themselves up. You're just contributing. And it creates frustration, and frustration drives the most interesting behaviors in human beings. When I cannot move towards what feels good and I'm stuck doing things that don't, I exhibit very interesting behavior. Very interesting. When I look at things and I provide the opportunity for you to know what you're doing well, what you can do better, and what the next steps are, what is the progress to moving forward? How do you do better today? What happens is I trigger their intrinsic motivation. Because people love to do more, love to do better. I saw this so much watching my father and being exposed to a lot of these development programs. It was so easy to judge young people that were delinquent, minor crimes, joining gangs. And I was always stunned to hear some of the diagnostic developmental gaps that were identified. That when I don't grow up in a structured home, I have no relationship with time. And when I show up in the adult world not understanding time and having no relationship, it becomes problematic. It certainly is problematic in American corporate world. If I don't know what an hour is, if I don't know how long something takes me, if I don't know how long it takes to get there, I'm at a disadvantage. When I understand and develop that, I show up differently. When people have no clue how to set a goal and proceed to attain it, at a young age, I was so surprised. I was setting goals when I was 8 years old and learning to attain them. And I was learning structure, and I was learning progress, and I was learning self-awareness and self-responsibility. I had chores when I was 5 years old, and I learned fundamental skills like that. And if I enter into my teen years or young adults and I don't understand how to set a goal and attain it, I'm going to struggle, really struggle. And when I see other people have what they want and I don't know how to get it, oftentimes I'll break the law to get it because I'm frustrated. It drives bad behavior. And I see the same thing in the corporate world today. I see other people getting promotions. I see other people getting raises. And if I have never been taught how to negotiate on my behalf, I'm going to accept lower wages. And I don't understand why everybody else is passing me up. So one thing is we can say, well, the policy is that we're going to pay everybody the same, so we'll just move you up. The development piece is we're going to make sure you know how to negotiate on your behalf and what your value is. That's so powerful. I want to give you the skill versus you being reliant on me doing it for you. It's super powerful. And we see that in organizations. We're just going to create a policy to avoid organizationally being punished versus committing to developing our people so that we don't have legal issues at all. It's a whole shift in mindset. When we think about how do we do this within our organization, because this is very culturally driven, I would say this. As we are here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, the People Playbook, and we're talking about how our business rises and falls on people, I would say this. Compliance creates resistance. Resistance drives disengagement. Disengagement creates turnover. Questions invite collaboration. Partnership and collaboration promote progress, growth, development, skill building. And progress triggers internal motivation to do better. If I had an organization full of people that were used to being told what to do and did what they were told to do and did it just so they didn't get in trouble, my business will look very different than those people who are intrinsically motivated to do a good job and to build themselves and the organization up. It's two very different cultures. It is, so no matter how great your process is, or your policies for that matter, the culture you create through your leadership will have a bigger impact on everything. Because it is people that drive process. And if people are disengaged, the process suffers. When people are fully engaged and know what they're doing, they will carry your process. You don't even have to have a good process. They'll carry it, they'll create it, they'll improve it, they'll make it work. People carry process. So influence matters. And it's the use of questions that empowers our ability to influence. So culture clearly eats process for breakfast. And if you really want to have that organization that retains people and attains the best talent, we've got to move away from that compliance piece. And that is not to say, as a final answer to that question, we don't hold people accountable. We hold people accountable after we've held ourselves accountable. And they are accountable when they know what they're to do, they have the skills to do it, we've communicated with them how they're doing and how to be better. And if they just simply choose not to do it or to do it wrong, that's when compliance steps in. Because if it's a value issue, I just don't want to do a good job. There will be those. Then they don't get to work in your organization that's based on integrity and standards and quality. And we have to be willing to work on an exit strategy with them and say, if you're not willing to meet our standards, we agree. Thank you. Let's start talking about our exit strategy. And we have to have the courage to do that. Thank you for listening today to the People Playbook with Coach Cora, where we understand our businesses rise and fall on people. Join us again here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer next Saturday on 2 p.m. when we visit with industry experts to learn tips to improve retention as we continue our retention chapter of the Playbook. As a listener of the People Playbook on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, you have access to a great deal. It is the new year, and with that comes new goals. For those leaders with developmental goals in hand, a 360 instrument can provide you the specific data you need to know what skills will improve your effectiveness when developed. And that is targeted development. With a one-on-one meeting with Coach Cora, you will have a personal development plan in place that aligns with your personal style, strengths, and preferences. Text the code 360 in 2026 to 210-488-3738 and receive the 360 Instrument Administration and a one-on-one coaching session with Coach Cora, not for $500, but for $450. That is a $50 savings. Again, text 360 in 2026 to 210-488-3738. And Coach Cora will make sure you have a personalized development plan in place for 2026. This is 9:30 a.m. The Answer. See you next Saturday.
Thank you for listening to the People Playbook. For more information, Coach Cora can be found on LinkedIn and at CoachCora.com. Let's meet here next Saturday, 2 p.m. on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.